video on making some Amaretti biscuits, but not Amaretti biscuits because there's no almonds in. We're going to be using peanut flour instead. So I bought some peanuts in the lockdown for another project. Stayed in the back of the cupboard for 3 years. They were past their best. So what I did was to invigorate them and give them some more life. I roasted them, and then it turned out like this. I made a video, it's probably the one before. I roasted them and turned out like that. And they taste nice again. They were a bit stale. And then I decided what I'd do with them is I'd make some peanut flour and use them in a bit of cooking. And it worked. It worked. So and I remember that my college lecturer used to use half and half peanut flour to almond flour. Almond flour? Ground almonds. It's ground, isn't it? Ground almonds, yes. So it's ground peanuts. It's not peanut flour. Used to use half and half mix because he said you couldn't tell the difference and it cut down on the cost of the pastry dishes that you were kind of making. On a side note, this is why you can't use peanuts anymore because lots of people tend to have peanut allergies. But this was one of the reasons. I think this is one of the kind of fundamental reasons why that a lot of restaurants struggle these days. Got a bit of peanut in the throat. Struggle to make money because they don't know how to make things cheaply. They have to rely on buying expensive ingredients to kind of give them the flavour that the previous generation chefs knew how to get flavour from ordinary ingredients rather than having to buy in that flavour. They knew how to cook things. They knew how to cook cheap dishes and make them taste delicious. And they also knew how to doctor things with other ingredients to make things go a little bit further. So my college lecturer would use peanuts, which would cut down the cost of the almonds. So peanuts are like a quarter of the price of almonds. So you still get the same mouth kind of feel because it's a nut, a ground nut, but you get the added benefit of it cutting down on the cost. So, and also you then use a little bit of almond essence to kind of improve the kind of flavour of like an almond cream or a frangipane tart or something like that. I've got more stories like that of how chefs used to doctor things to make them more cheaper, but we'll get sidetracked, won't we? So, not going to make Amaretti biscuits with ground almonds, we're going to make them with ground peanuts. So these are the ground peanuts. There are 200 grams worth of ground peanuts, and there is zest of 2 lemons in there, and there is also 100 grams worth of caster sugar. And I added the caster sugar and I ground the peanuts in the blender. Is it a blender? I forgot what they're called. One of these things with the lids that you put on. Those are blades. It's not a blender. It's not a hand blender. It's not a liquidizer. Food processor. Food processor. So I ground the peanuts in the food processor. Then I added the sugar and the lemon zest, and then kind of ground it all together. There is 2 egg whites. It said medium on the recipe. Oh, that's another thing. I was looking at this recipe and it was far too complicated. I thought we can simplify that. But I'm not simplifying it because I've rattled on about my old college lecturer. Interesting guy, I really liked him actually. And then there is 20 grams worth of sugar in there. I've whisked up the egg whites. I have with the sugar. And then, yeah, so the recipe was rattling on about making a lemon sugar. And I was like, why on earth do you need to do that? Just put the lemons in with the other ingredients. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. So now we need to... It's not clumped up too much. Now, it's not as fine as the stuff you buy, but we'll see how we go. So we mix half of this mixture into the ground nuts. Don't make this recipe if you're allergic to nuts. Don't feed it to anyone if anyone's allergic to nuts. We fold this into here to make a paste, and then we fold in the other egg whites. These might be large eggs. That smells nice. I can't really see the point in why we whisk them, because we're just going to knock all the air out of them doing this. This seems a little bit daft. So to make a paste. It's more like a paste. This is pointless, is this? Although, probably just adding the egg whites to the ground nuts and sugar probably wouldn't have been a good idea either. So, and certainly once we fold in, foldy. Alright, so we've kept a little bit of volume, but then we're going to roll it, and we're going to leave it in the fridge for an hour to cool, and then we're going to form it into balls. So any kind of air that we've whisked into the egg whites is going to be lost. But there must be another reason for that, because you know, you don't just do things for no reason. So that's a big bowl. Let's put that in there. But we've kind of lost all that air that we've whisked into the egg whites, and because we'll lose even more through it being in the fridge. But anyway, there must be a reason, and just because I don't understand the reason doesn't mean it's not worth doing. So that in there like that, leave that in the fridge to cool for an hour, and then we'll form it into some balls, and then we'll bake, and then dust it in some icing sugar, and then we'll bake it in the oven, and we'll see how they turn out. Right, so it's chilled. The recipe says we can get 15 biscuits out of this mixture. So let's cover 16 because that makes it a little bit easier, and then all we have to do is divide that into 4, and then we just need to get 4 out of each side. 4 times 4, 16. That's much easier than kind of going 3.5 out of each quarter. So I reckon that's about a teaspoon, probably a little bit more. The recipe says roll in icing sugar. Now, I don't use much icing sugar. I've got some, but let's do some with icing. Oh, that needs to be a little bit more powdered than that, doesn't it? That's a bit clumpy. So the recipe says in icing sugar, but so we don't have to. So you don't have to buy icing sugar. Let's do one without, and then let's do one with caster sugar. And then because we've already bought the caster sugar, confectioner's. No, it's not confectioner's sugar, but the stuff that you make cakes out of, that sugar. I don't know what it's called in the rest of the world. In the UK, it's called caster sugar. So that's approximately, let's call it a teaspoon size bit. So, teaspoon size bit of mixture. Roll it in your hand, and then roll it in the caster sugar. It says even, but and then they want to go in the oven at 190 C. We don't use Fahrenheit in the UK. Gas Mac 5. I don't think people use gas ovens anymore. I think my mum's still got one, but that's because she's quite old-fashioned in the things that she likes. I think it's whatever you get used to. So if you get used to using a gas oven, then you want to carry on using gas. It says 2 trays, so we will use 2 trays, and we'll make how many we want. We'll do a few with each type of sugar, and then we get a better idea, because ovens cook in different ovens have hot spots. My oven's getting a little bit old, and I think the seal around the door is going, so that kind of affects the cooking of things. So, and all ovens are different. It's just a case of getting used to things. So if you've got it's another bit of the chef's tip. If you've got a cheap oven and you find that it's not cooking things particularly very even, and the heat comes from the bottom of the oven, what you do is you buy a thick baking, like a cast iron pan would do it, but like a thick bit of metal in the bottom of your pan, and then that'll just distribute the heat just that little bit better. So I've got this, that's an aluminium tray, so like 2 of those, or a sheet steel, a bit of sheet steel in the bottom of your oven will just make things cook a little bit more evenly, because the heat will be dispersed just that little bit equally. You know, like putting a cast iron pan in the bottom of your oven, that'd work as well, just to stop heat spots. Anyway, so that's that. Carry on doing that. You don't need to see the rest of it, and we'll see how we go. But they might spread out a bit too much, but we'll see. So they are cooked, and we can see the difference in the sugars. So these are the ones without any sugar on. Those are the ones with icing sugar on, and those are the ones with caster sugar on. So we'll give them a taste afterwards, and you can also see that they've been in a lower part of the oven, so were in slightly less time but cooked more and done in icing sugar. So let's pull them off the tray. So if things have been in the oven just a little bit too long, take them off the tray and then they'll cool down a little bit quicker, because there's residual heat in the tray, so get them off the tray as quickly as possible and then they'll cool down just a little bit more. So we're supposed to leave them for 10 minutes to cool slightly, and then we're supposed to put them on a rack. I kind of want to eat them now, but they look alright, don't they? Actually look like Amaretti biscuits. I want to be soft on the inside. Let's break into one now. Have a look. That looks alright, doesn't it? That looks alright. Delicious. Delicious, and certainly a lot cheaper than buying ground almonds. So now we know we can do them with peanuts. That means we can do them with all kinds of nuts. So we could do them with cashew nuts, we could do them with hazelnuts, we could do them maybe not pecan nuts because they've got that stuff on the outside, but any kind of nut that's had it's just like that have been blanched and had the outsides taken off them. So any kind of nut that you fancy. I suppose even a Brazil nut as well. If you could get some Brazil nuts without that browny kind of like papery stuff on the outside. Same recipe applies. I roasted them because they were a little bit old and tasting a little bit stale. So that's another tip. If your nuts are getting a little bit old, just re-roast them. Or just, well, they weren't roasted to start off with, but it just livens them back up and takes that stale-ish taste away. So you don't need to roast the nuts, but only do that if they are just a little bit past their best. But there we go, they're delicious, and certainly a lot cheaper. So therefore, a success.